Hi there, my name's Josh, and today I want to go over every single connector on the motherboard. This is going to cover the internal connectors and not the external rear I/O. So we're going to go over everything here and just pay a lot of attention down here where there's a lot of stuff going on actually. And I want you to at a glance understand this and not perceive it as just plastic and metal being barfed all over the board. And if you don't know what's going on, that's kind of what it looks like. So we're going to get into this and just go over step by step, go over each one. This isn't going to be a fully inclusive list. There are some motherboards that have very specific server environment connectors. There are some motherboards that have very proprietary connectors, such as in very ultra small form factor machines. This is going to cover basically the 99%. So let's get into it. We're going to start with power. The most notable one here is the 24-pin motherboard power connector. This is going to be a mixture of 12 volts, 5 volts, 3.3 volts, and a couple signal wires. This is the component that supplies nearly all of the power to all of your motherboard components, such as RAM, chipset, PCI slots. We have some audio and onboard LAN somewhere up in there. And the idea is that this connector is going to power all of that. The next one is going to be our 4 or 8 pin power connector for the CPU. This is a dedicated line specifically for the CPU. It is going to feed into this power circuitry here and then is going to go into your socket. The idea behind this is it is its own power source. It's not going to have any interference with any other sources. It's not going to have to compete with anything else. This 12 volts is specifically for your CPU. And that comes in handy when you're looking at overclocking or just generally higher power CPUs. And the last thing as far as power is concerned is I want to go over our CMOS battery. I call this an I/O because you can take out the battery and put it back in. This is a 3.3 volt battery. All motherboards have it to keep track of time and a couple BIOS settings. And it is going to rest on this board. So that covers power. The next thing we're going to go over is the main system components. They will rest in the kind of core part of the board up here. It consists of your CPU, the RAM, and etc. So the first one is the CPU socket. This can be either a land grid array or a pin grid array, and that simply defines how your CPU is going to connect to it. Does the CPU have pins, or does the socket itself have pins? In this case, the socket itself has pins, and my processor that I would put in there would be a land grid array. And this specific socket is called the LGA 1155. That means only processors for the 1155 can go in there. The next thing on our computer is RAM. This is where we slot in RAM. This is where we put stuff to store it. This is where we put Windows at while we're using it. Some motherboards have 4, some have 2, some even have 8 or 6. It depends on how many different channels of memory RAM you have. And if you're running a server board with 2 CPUs, you'll potentially have a lot of physical banks for RAM to be put into, simply due to the high amount of RAM being supported on that system. Here we have a different motherboard here just to give some examples and comparisons. The last main system component we're going to talk about is this right here. This is a PCI Express X16 slot. This means it has 16 lanes of communication to our CPU. This slot is generally used for graphics cards, and these graphics cards would have their own power connector. Some computers will also have extra cards such as sound cards, network cards, capture cards. These would fit into the PCI Express. This is a high-speed bus, and it is a lot faster than USB. This is how these components can work so fast and do so much. Now that we've gone over the main system components, let's talk about storage. Storage has always been given its own connector. Before, we would have 40-pin IDE connectors. They were real big, and they would have like a ribbon, and they would connect to your devices, and it would be a large parallel interface. But nowadays, we have the Sata interface. It stands for Serial ATA, and this would connect to your hard drive. This would connect to your optical drive, And this might also connect to your tape drive as well, or any kind of storage related medium. And this interface is specifically for storage, and there are certain features that it has above USB, such as direct media access, or basically a way to transfer files without taking up all the processor's time. It has its own connectors. This board has 4, the other one had 6. Some boards have 8. Generally, you're looking at 2 to support a minimum of a hard drive and an optical drive. Now, the next thing we have is our MDOT drive. This is for NVMe drives. This is for Sata drives. The idea is that this is a super fast interface. So Sata was limited to about 560 Mbps. This one transfers at the PCI Express speeds. A lot faster. It has its own dedicated connection to the CPU. It can talk very fast. It is able to store solid state drives only, which just generally makes it faster. It's a very low power consuming bus. So on the bottom of your motherboard, there is a lot of stuff going on. And that is the I/O, the general purpose I/O that I want to go over right now, just to wrap up this video. So down here, we're going to go over this. This is USB 3.0. This is how your high-speed devices talk to. Any kind of external hard drives nowadays are going to talk through this interface. And this is an internal connector. So this would connect to the front panel of your computer case. And whenever you see a blue USB port on the front of your case, it usually terminates right into this. And there'll be a plug that goes in there. And if we move down the board, we're going to see 2 USB 2.0 headers. USB 2.0 has been around forever. It's relatively cheaper to make. It takes up less size on the board, so we're going to see this around for a while. This is great for your mouses, your printers, your keyboards, any kind of generally low speed I/O. Low speed compared to other high speed devices such as a external solid state drive. And as we go down here, we have the front panel audio. This could be the front panel HD audio. And then we also have SPDIF out. Don't see that one used a lot, but it is there, and it's generally around the sound card on your motherboard. So whenever you plug your headphones into the front part of your case, this is where it terminates into. This is how your headphones are talking to your sound card. So my sound card's up, yep, it's right here. The front panel audio is right there. So headphones, go to this, go to this. That's how it happens. And the last thing I want to go over is our front panel connectors. Front panel is your power switch, it is your reset switch, it is your hard drive light, and it is your power light. So this allows you to see if your computer's on without having to listen for fans, without having to listen for other things going on. This is a standardized plug by Intel. So little tiny jumpers will go in here. Fun fact, I have a computer back there that I'm able to start with a screwdriver because it doesn't have a case. It's just kind of on the back bench right there. We started with a screwdriver every morning, and that's how that thing starts up. What I'm doing is I'm shorting out the power switch pins to turn it on, to simulate me pushing the power button. So that's it for wait a minute. We have one last thing to go over. It's the ultimate connector. I can't believe I forgot it. Of all the connectors that we've gone over, this is the most important one. These boards, they don't have it. They were taken out of the wild because they were found to not have this specific connector. The specific connector to end all connectors. It is called and the real guys don't want you to know this, RGB connector. Red, green, and blue. You can get that sweet, sweet decal lighting. No, but seriously, it is a connector. It is popping up on most modern motherboards, and it's generally characterized by about 3 or 4 pins on the same row. It looks very similar to our SPDIF out over here. So if you guys can see that right there, it's just kind of 3 or 4 pins in a row. It will generally have a white underlying connector thing, and it sticks out a lot. And you'll plug in an RGB strip. You can plug in your AMD Prism heatsink fan controller thingy, and you can control what lights are on that from the motherboard. So that's all for this internal I/O connectors. So I want you to know that not everything I went over today is going to be on every single board. So servers and ultra small form factor computers will have their own proprietary connections, and same for laptops. So just kind of take it as it goes, and I hope this has taught you to not see this as just a barf of plastic and metal, but really as just an organized, this is where stuff goes and this is where I should put stuff. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe. Have a good day.